First of all, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy days to come and learn a little bit about Goffstown. Susan and I live in Goffstown. I've actually lived here all my life. Grew up right on Wallace Road. Susan moved here in the early 70s, so we know Goffstown pretty well, and I've had an admiration for my village, and I've learned over the years working with the Main Street program, I've learned a lot about it, and I've documented a lot of neat things and captured some great pictures, and I'm going to share everything with you tonight. And we're going to stay in the village, the downtown area, and what I like to make mention of is you will, as we take the tour, you're gonna hear a lot of names, familiar names that are names that your street may be named after. The Parkers, the Stinsons. You're gonna hear the Barnards Playground. So some familiar names are gonna come up, and these roads, these locations were all dedicated to those people who were a big part of the Goffstown village in the early 1900s. If we could let's go down to the statue. That's pretty much where I like to start the tour. This little parcel of land from here over once housed the Masonic Hall. A lot of people don't know that. It was tiny, but it was in 1907 it burnt to the ground. And it was left to the town of Goffstown, and they put $500 together, and they beautified this end of it. In 1916, Henry Parker, he was the grandson of Charles Stinson. Stinson Road, he was a colonel, and Henry Parker purchased this monument, and he dedicated it not only to his grandfather, but it was put here to recognize all the Goffstown heroes who went to war. And if you lived in the town of Goffstown and went to war, your name became part of this statue. And to this day, it's still recognized. We have a lot of the names are on the bricks, and it's basically to recognize Goffstown war heroes. And around that time, there was what was called the Central House, the Goffstown Central House Hotel. And it stood right where that lawn is, or I would say more out here, right on the common. That's what it looked like. It was called the New Hampshire Central House, and the Central Railroad was instrumental in bringing this to Goffstown because at the Central Railroad was coming to town, bringing passengers at that time. The hotel was actually a stop for the Concord stagecoach, and it would stop here and it headed up 13 towards Concord. And as a lot of folks don't realize that it was called the stagecoach because it was a stage of the journey from Boston. It could only go so many miles with the horses, and they had to stop every so often and hook up new horses. And if you looked in the picture, you saw there was a livery stable right over there, and they would exchange the horses and continue on their journey north. So that was part of the stagecoach, I think you can see right there. After the Central Hotel burnt down, it was rebuilt and became the Brenton Inn. And it was later on, and when that burnt down, it became a gift to the town of Goffstown, the land for the town common. And it still, to this day, is recognized as the Goffstown Town Common. That all took place in 1940. It was the final days of the Brenton Inn, and then it became the Goffstown, the Town Common. The next picture we have is of, this is the, this has been in the late 1800s, and this is one of the earliest photos that I could find, and you're seeing this was just before the trolley system came to Goffstown. The trolleys came in early 1900s, 1901. The trolleys were coming from Manchester. It was the Manchester Central Trolley Network. and they brought their trolleys. Goffstown was one of the first villages to have an actual transportation from the city of Manchester. The trolley came in, it stopped right there by the library, actually in front of the Parker station. The conductor would get out, he would flip the rod on the top of the trolley, and it reversed polarity and took the trolley back to Manchester. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to head this way. So let's go down this way. The first building we're going to look at is actually the Main Street building. It was originally a livery out back, and later on repaired carriages, and you would get your wheels repaired for your carriages, and that was out back where the laundromat is. And what a lot of people are not aware of, and we know because we office ourselves in the Main Street building right there. That's where we do all our operations. There's a little inside the building. There is a little what do we want to call it?
Well, there's a courtyard, except that there's no door to the courtyard.
It's a tiny courtyard.
Little tiny.
It's 27 feet long, 9 feet wide, and you can't get to it. But it was just the way back then they would add building, add on. They suddenly boxed themselves in, and they had a useless little piece of land in the middle. And that's our secret little courtyard that nobody knows about. This building was built in 1860, and you're going to hear the name Richards. Richards was a very prominent name in Goffstown. I'm not sure, I don't know of a street or any buildings named after the Richards, but they're very instrumental in getting the Historical Society building started. Illifit Richards was his name, and he built this in 1860. Illifit Richards was the local tax collector, and he actually became one of the very first selectmen for the town of Goffstown, and that's where he lived. But you can see they added on different sections of the building. You kind of look, the courtyard's right over the other side of that chimney. All right, we're going to head on to Sawyers, and we're going to learn a little bit about what went on at Sawyers. This is now Sawyers Restaurant. This actually was built in 1930, and this was recognized as the largest fountain and candy store in the state of New Hampshire. And it was called Pierce's Candy Store, and there used to be actually a little restaurant on this side, Hitching Post. It was called the Hitching Post, and this is where kids hung out in the morning. Every morning the kids all hung out here because the school street's right here, and you go and get your penny candy, your sodas, and you headed to school. But we'll go around the corner here. We're going to head up School Street, and believe it or not, the house right behind this building used to be attached. It used to be attached. In 1967, the whole upper level of this building burnt down, and it was rebuilt. And it went on to be, this always been a family restaurant. the Larrows, the Warings were here, multiple owners over the years. So that's what little history we have on that. Not the oldest of all buildings, but it certainly served its purpose. One of the oldest buildings, built in 1810, right to this was recognized as the Marty Cochran estate. Now, this was built in 1810, and this served as the local tavern. This was a livery also, where they repaired carriages and so forth. Post office. This was the local post office. It was sold. The original owner sold it to a gentleman by the name of John Stevens, who became the postmaster, and he ran the local post office right here. And it got passed on. One of the next owners was Charles Barnard, and he was the one who provided us with Barnard's Playground. And that's the Barnard's, he has a little road named after him, but Barnard's Playground. Charles Barnard, he passed it on to his nieces, and it was all stayed in the family for years. Marty Cochran was one of the last, and we appreciated everything. She kept the property up as best as she could, and to this day, I don't believe it's still in the family. Is it, Melinda? Yeah, the granddaughter currently, so it's still in the family. But 1922 is when it went to her, and it's been in that family ever since. So there's a lot of history in this building, and it is one of our proudest corner houses. Let's head up to School Street. We're going to tell you all about what happened up here, and you'll find out why it was called School Street. Back in the mid-1800s, the kids in Goffstown went to little schoolhouses. There was a schoolhouse on Mountain Road, there was a schoolhouse on Patty Hill Road. How many schoolhouses were there, Barbara? 13, she's correct. She wins the lucky prize. Now 13 schoolhouses became a lot of work getting the kids to and from the schools. And so that's when, and in 1874, they decided it was time to build a central school for the entire town of Goffstown. And as we approach, you can see this beautiful structure still sits the way it was built back in 1874. All kids went here from 1st grade to 12th grade. The 12th grade, the younger kids were on the bottom floor, the older kids on the upper floors. There was one bathroom on the bottom floor, and they all shared it. I personally went to school here in 1968, 69. I did, as the years went on, newer schools were built, and I'll tell you about those as we get around the corner here. But I went to school here in 6th grade, and so I had some pretty neat memories in there. The big wooden staircases, the floors. It's still, right now it's being used by the school superintendent's offices here. But it still stands the way it was back then. In 1925, the town had outgrown the school and it was time to move on to bigger things. As you can see, Goffstown High School was built, and this became the school. This was where all the kids went. Some of the lower level grade school kids would stay here, but everybody else was in the high school. This was the building right here. It was state of the art in its time. When it was originally built, it did not have cafeteria or gymnasium. But in 1947, they added that on, and I went to school there also. That's where I went to 7th and 8th grade. And big tall ceilings, I mean big schoolrooms. You can see the windows are exactly the way they were in school. Not very, as far as heat efficiency and so forth, that was not a priority. Big boiler room. In 1966, the town outgrew this and they built the new high school over on Wallace Road. And this became the junior high, 7th and 8th grade. This was 6th grade, and then the Maple Avenue is where you went for your the elementary years. And so it was pretty great. It's a fantastic structure. I mean, and it's still in the early 90s it became inhabitable, and they did have to. Everybody had to leave. It was vacant for several years. A few windows were getting broken, but finally the town got together and through different grants and so forth, it's now known as the Meeting House. The Meeting House. So let's head this way. We're going to walk by. In 1883, there became a great need in the community and surrounding towns for a grist mill. This was a place where you brought your wheats, your corns, your grains to get them processed and milled. There weren't many places you could take it. So a couple of gentlemen by the Parkers, it was actually John and David Parker, along with Kendrick Kendall. They brainstormed this building and said, we need to create, we had the river, the water's flowing, we can get a water-powered grist mill together. And they actually built it in 1883, and the trains were coming to town at that point, the railroad. They were bringing in other towns. They said as far west, Massachusetts, there's Rhode Island. They were bringing their products here to be housed and milled. The barn to the left was all part of the whole structure. There was a connector though. There was a roof that connected the two. So because they were constantly bringing their products. When they came in, you loaded it, and they unloaded everything in that barn, and then they slowly brought it in day by day and processed it. Got it back to you packaged and on the train. It went back to your town where it came from. So it was really something in its time. They were ahead of their time. They really felt the need was there. Oh yeah, the sign's right there, 1883. And it worked. And we're going to go down there and take a look through the fence into the water, and we're going to see how that grist mill worked. Now if you can picture this, you cranked up the gate. Right now the gate is shut. And when you crank that gate up, the whole door fixture came up, the water flowed through the grist mill, and it operated the combines down there that ground down the corns and all the wheat, the products, but it was all powered by water. So it was something, let's face it, electricity was a rarity, and you had water-powered grist mill. And it still stands here to this day. There's a lot of pictures that to be shared on Facebook. Go to I grew up in Goffstown, and you'll see some fantastic pictures. There was a gentleman by the name of George Lane who grew up, he spent about 8 or 10 years in Goffstown as a young fella, and his family moved out west to Arizona, but his father was a photographer, and he took endless pictures. He was constantly taking pictures of Goffstown, and there's some pictures of this right from here, different flooding stages through the years, and so if you ever get a chance, take a look at that. But that's there's a hydropower dam over there that's been there for years. That was the location of what was called overhead doors, where they made doors and windows. Before that, it was the nation or the state's only bobbin factory, where they actually made bobbins for thread and yarn, and that's what was located over there. So it's seen a lot of different businesses. There's some great history over there, but it still remains. The building's empty, looking for a tenant. If anybody wants to get in on it, we could fill that factory right up with some new businesses. But that's a little bit about the grist mill and what went on right here. We're going to head up, this is called Mill Street. As you'll see, a couple the old original homes are still sitting there just the way they were back in the early 1900s. The first house on your right, my left, is it's actually the Malcolm Jennings home. It was the original owner, and it was built in 1836. I won't say the original owner, but he was when documentation was gathered. He was the owner, but it was built in 1836. The next one is the Pritch Whipple home. That's 7 Mill Street. Look at that place. I mean, that's the way. I've read a few different stories over the years of people that lived in that apartment. I'd like to share this little poem, and this is part of, and it connects me and my guests with the Uncanunic Mountains, and it goes like this. And it was written by Lena Lamson. She was the mother of the late Gardner Lamson. It goes like this: in a sheltered valley, the town of Goffstown lies, with foothills all about it. 2 mountains touch the skies. And in this peaceful valley, and on the foothills too, there thrives a sweet contentment and a kindly spirit true. And folks who leave this valley return with memories sweet, to view again dear Goffstown as the Uncanunics greet. And this is the perfect place to see those Uncanunics right here. And that was written, and it kind of sums up, you know, we have a lot of people come back to Goffstown for Old Home Day, and you will be back someday when you leave and you get married. You'll be back here with your family, because everybody comes back eventually. Right, Rada? And so as we talk about the Uncanunic Mountains, there's so much rich history that went on up there. This was the Grand Hotel on the top of Mount Uncanunic. And this is what people saw. People came from everywhere on those trolley cars to visit the Uncanunics. So right here, there were more catastrophes that happened than any other little area in town. And if you come over here, I want you to see this picture from where I'm standing. And just picture this. This is the building right behind me. And this was the flood of 1936. And you can see, literally wiped out the building almost. Took the whole, all the foundation washed out, but it was salvaged. This building was actually a garage. It became a repair station where cars would be repaired. The original owner actually was, let me see here, Benaiah Richards. Actually, Benaiah Richards, another Richards name. There's one of the many brothers that were locals. In 1833, the building was constructed. It became, across the street, we're going to talk about it when we get there, there was the town's first showroom floor garage where they sold cars. And they later bought this building and made it a repair station because they sold the cars there and they repaired them over here. And the story goes, the gas pumps that were there for 100 years, they had to move the building. It used to be 12 feet closer to the road, and they had to move the entire building back 12 feet to make room for the tanks underground so they could sell gas. And that's why it was one of the town's first filling stations. Became a repair shop, gas station. And so it went on with multiple owners. Paul Bailey was an owner. Bill Hodgson was an owner. It went on to Gary Shreve, and now Bill Brown owns it. And Jennifer Brown operates Brown Graphics here, so it's been in the family for a long time. But I've always liked you see that the building's just the way it was. This was added on. This little part was added on, but it went through a lot. Behind you, let's step out. We'll go over to here where the trestle was. Well, you can see these are portions of the original track where the train came through, and you see the abutments are still here, the granite abutments. Every kid that grew up in Goffstown climbed in this bridge, including myself. My name was up there in more places than one. And I might have even had puffed on my first cigarette up in this trestle. Everybody did, you know, it wasn't right. But that was finally that was the demise of the trestle in 1976. And there were a couple of kids smoking up in their trestle, and it caught fire. You know, they were careless and it caught fire. And that was the end of the train trestle. It was actually built in 1850 is the nearest I could find, and that was doing a little bit of research. 1850, give or take, is when it was burnt. This is a picture of the original trestle, and this was like before, and that's during. And you can see, they said it was so hot it was melting the paint off the fire trucks. They were all parked across the bridge. It burnt the whole side of that building right there. That's the Gordon Burns Insurance Building. Burnt the whole side. And so it was quite a catastrophe. I mean, it was a sad day for Goffstown. So many kids grew up enjoying the bridge, and that was the end. But there it was. That was our way into town. That's where we had the railroad station. It was the depot was over there. We're going to talk about that when we get over there. But that was the demise of the downtown trestle. And there were people lined up everywhere watching this, and it was a real sad day. I mean, you could see, I've been told as far as Penardville, people could see the smoke bellowing up. If you were at Barnett's Playground at the pool, you saw smoke bellowing up, and the fire trucks were coming from everywhere. So it was, yeah, it was definitely a sad day. Well, in 1766, the very first bridge was built that crossed the Piscataqua. Now there was actually 4 bridges over time that were built, and they've all, there was in 1766, the main bridge was built, and it burnt, and it was washed away in the floods. In 1860, there was the most beautiful bridge. It was a wooden bridge with lattice, and it had walkways that went on both sides. It was a sight to see, but it was not the strongest bridge in the world. So that got washed on one of the hurricanes and floods. Then came the era of the trolley cars, and They built a steel bridge across that would definitely hold the weight of the trolleys coming and going. But that only lasted so long, and finally in 1928, this bridge was built, and here it is today. It's been improved. It was actually, I don't know, about 5 or 7 years ago. They improved it, and they got it back to specs where it should be. This was in 1936, and there's that bridge as it stood with the flood. That was the flood of 1936, and you can see that water was pretty high, and there was people standing on the bridge looking down and putting their feet in the water. I mean, that's how high the water was. All right, we're going to just mosey on across the bridge. We're going over to the actually the Gordon Burns building, and we're going to just turn around there and we'll head back. But that's where we're going to head now. Right as I'm standing right here, underneath me is the foundation for this building. Because the road used to be further out, and so the building was close to the road, and as time went on, progress was made, the road had to be widened, the bridge had to be widened, the building had to be cut short. So the foundation for this building is right underneath us, and you can see in this picture, which dates back to 1929, this was all porches. Everybody sat on the porch, and you can see the building right there with 2 levels of porches up there and down here. And so I've been in this basement, and you literally walk under the street. And a few years ago, they had a little sinkhole went on over here, and it was actually water was coming from the street, going right down into the basement of this building. But that's the building remains, and a lot of history here. So a really nice building. We're going to cross right here in this fashionable crosswalk where nobody gets hurt. Yeah. And you can see in this picture, I mean, there it is, 1929, that building as it was. And it was the WA Patty. They sold provisions, meats, just household items. But that's one of the trucks from the store. And they used to decorate their trucks on the 4th of July parade. Goffstown had a 4th of July parade back then. Being a local business, they decorated one of their trucks, and they ran down Main Street. This was another garage. Earlier years, I remember it probably in the mid-60s. I used to come here. It was a laundromat, and this is where my family came to do their laundry. And so this was a laundromat. And that was after, it would have been Fletcher. Richard Fletcher's dad ran a gas station here. Yeah, this was a gas station. I'm gonna guess a Mobile. And then it got sold, renovated, and became a laundromat and a dentist in later years. In the early 70s, it was a dentist. And now it houses Gordon Burns Insurance. But anyways, we're going to move down this way. We'll head north across the bridge, and we're going to take a look at the Smith block. Come on, let's take a look. So this is the Smith block, the first section, and the second section is the Page block. And the Page block, you hear the name. You've heard of Page Hill Road. I mean, everybody, there's a connection all the way through. There was families that they kept the buildings up. They rented them over the years for local businesses. There's been a barber shop in this little corner store. Henry Hunter. Who knows Henry Hunter? I believe this gentleman does. He ran his barber shop here for, boy, I want to say, some say 40 years, I believe. He was cutting hair here. Yeah, I used to come here when I was a young boy and get my hair cut. And there's been a few different businesses come and gone, but it's now a barber shop again.
It's been for 100 years. 100
years, that's what it is. It's a total of 100 years. It's been a barber shop. So even before Henry Hunter, I believe, there was Henry Hunter's not that old, so, yeah. But anyways, you can see how the buildings have been joined. That building, the Page block, it was gutted several times. It had different fires that occurred, and but they always rebuilt and got another business in there. Come on, we'll keep going. I'd like to bring everybody to this spot because it is my belief that this next picture was taken right from where you're standing. The town hall caught fire, and there it is, and everybody, you can see everybody's looking at the town hall while it burnt to the ground. I really love this picture because it still looks the same after all these years. And that building, that was actually built in 1895. Yeah. Right here you're going to see the town hall. There were a lot of ups and downs over the years with the town hall. You saw where it burnt down. That was in 1937. Everything burnt to the ground, burnt down except for the only thing that was salvaged was a little round corner house, which is the town's library. The books were stored. And that remains in the back there. It's now the Spotted Sheep. The Spotted Sheep, and it's owned by the Blondos, and it still remains. But you can see that's the fire. The building, the original building was built in 1869. In 1937, the fire. In 1947, they were able to build the lower floors, so they had a place to have meetings and stuff. And I think the greatest contribution was by Mildred G. Stark in 1969, and they donated $269,000 to finish the town hall to the way it sits today. And one of the remarkable things that I always admire is that clock. That clock was a gift from the entire Parker family. Harry, David, all the Parkers and the sisters, they all, in honor of their mother and father, they donated that clock, and it's still here to this day as you see it. It's been worked on and improved over the years, but there's the clock that was donated by the Parkers. So a little bit of remembrance from them. Well, a lot of you recognize the old church, the first Congregational church. The first church that was built here was in 1916. And it tells you all about it right here, 1916. The church was sold a year later to the city of Nashua. They literally moved the church to Nashua, relocated it, and they built another one. The current structure was built in 1845 at a cost of $2,500. So you can see a lot of building for $2,500. The structure was a Greek revival in style. Church was enlarged in 1869 and remodeled again. You can see the slate roof, all the slate peaks up there is just the way it was built. A lot of history. A lot of people have been married in this church and spent much of their life here. But and it tells you this is one of the town historical markers. You'll see these in different locations throughout the town, and you'll just gives you a rundown of when the building was built, how long how long it stayed, or if it burnt down. It gives you some great history. I know there's one at the historical building. There's going to be more as time goes on, but it's a great thing to learn about the downtown. We're going to hit up Church Street and just take a look at the Sargent Block. That's our next stop. This is recognized as the Sargent Block, and it was built in 1888 by Henry Johnson and Walter Sargent. This was later, it housed the local bank, Merchants First National, right, Barbara? It was the first credit union. First credit union was right here. The local post office was right here. So there's a lot of history, a lot of people coming and going out of this building. And now pretty much got a few rentals here, but it's apartments up above. But it was, yeah, right, first Union Market in the early 1900s. Post office later, and then Merchants First National. I opened my first bank account here. So it was pretty neat, 10 years old, put my first dollar in there. Across the street, Susan, a couple of good pictures. Early time post office was across the street. And right beside it was a little meat market. And the little meat market was the A.R. Davis Meat Market. And it was located on the site of the mini park on Church Street. So that was a little meat market, and the post office was right beside it. But you can see, you're looking at 1910. So this was, you know, as you seek the history, you learn there was they had a lot of post office. You know, the post office moved a lot, and it got bigger and bigger as time went on. And today it's over there. If everybody could take a little peek over here, I'd like you to look around the corner. That was the part of the town hall that remains. That was the only part of the town hall that was salvaged when it burnt. And inside it's been remodeled nicely, but when the town hall burnt, that was Lucy Rogers, and we'll talk a little bit at the end. But Lucy Rogers had donated 150 books to the town of Goffstown. That was the beginning to our first library. We didn't have a library, so we called that the library, and all the books were housed in there at the town hall. But there it remains. So why don't you just picture what it was like in the early 1900s. You pulled up with your horse and carriage, and everybody was hanging out at the Parker Block. This was owned by the Parker brothers, the entire Parker family. It was known as they had 3 or 4 different names over the years. Parker's Warehouse, Parker's just Parker's Store, Parker's General Store. But it was always Parker Industries, Parker family that the Parkers owned it, and they had moved it. They were originally up at Parker Station is where they originally started, but they moved the business here because there was more. We're in the downtown, and they sold you name it, hardware items, all your farming needs. You could get all your provisions for you know, for eating, all your foods, all your grains, everything you could buy here at the Parker Block. I look at that building, and it's still the way it was in 1910. You can see it hasn't changed much. It would later on be the Oddfellows conducted all their meetings on the upper floor. That whole upper floor is like is a hall. You could have a dance up there. It's like a big dance hall. So there's a lot of history. I've always, I guess, to just see how everybody hung out at the Parker Block, I mean, makes you want to step into time and be part of that, you know. But this is probably my favorite spot in the downtown. Take a look at that. That's the original Elm Street in the early 1900s. You can see pretty neat history there. The old house, the road was not quite as wide as it is now. Right here, this is the corner of this building. It was Leon Pierce. He had Pierce's Five and Dime. He later moved down there, but
He owned
both? He owned both. I didn't know that. But this is, it was called Pierce's Variety. And you can see the horse and buggy pulling up in a snowstorm. And it reads as follows: Pierce's store on Main Street, Goffstown. It is deep in snow at the end of the 19th century. Still a typical New Hampshire winter scene. Earl Goodwin is posted here with his sled. And the site is now occupied by an antique shop. So that was Pierce's, but that was one of the older pictures of it. This is a Sully's before it was Sully's. It was a big rooming house or a hotel type thing. You could see it 3 stories high. Knights of Pythia. That's right, and I think it's right in the picture. Right, it says right there, Knights of Pythia. So it's quite a building, you can see. And this was one of my favorite sites, and you really can't see it too good from here, but you'll recognize it. This was called the Moore and Campbell Blacksmith Shop. And that's TD Bank right there, folks. That's where, and if you went down there and took a closer look with this picture, the original the windows are in the original place. The foundation is original granite foundation. It's amazing that it's still there. And these 2 gentlemen started this blacksmith shop, and they were the first business. It was from I'm gonna tell you the year. It was 1874 to 1922. 50 years in business and they were the first business in the town of Goffstown to be in the same location for 50 years. And there they are. And the way they did there, they basically they fixed carts and trailers, horse trailers. That's where you brought your carriages to be fixed. And they did general blacksmith work. the last thing, there is one last thing, Charlie's Popcorn Stand was started in 1930. He used to go to the bottom of Wallace Road and set up that popcorn stand, right, that exact popcorn stand at the bottom of Wallace Road in 1930. He would sell popcorn, and he would actually bring it in by horse. It was horse and buggy. It was a horse pull it in, set it up, sell popcorn, bring it home at the end of the day. It was called Charlie's Popcorn Stand. It went on to become, it was purchased by the Lions Club. I do have a little bit. Okay, it started in 1930. His name was Louis Prince. We want to know who started it. He set it up daily. It was actually at the bottom of Wallace Road was Shirley Park, and that was one where the trains stopped there. So it was a lot of foot traffic. So he sold a lot of popcorn, and it was there for 15 years. He finally got moved here, and the Lions Club took it over, and is now owned and operated, that piece of property with the popcorn stand, by the Lions Club. And that ends today's tour. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the show.